So we are having multi-vehicle capability being added to the game. What are 3 AA systems that I think need to be added using that system? 3 that are too good or too iconic to not be added. And I'm not talking about S300s and 400s and Patriot systems. We're talking about older systems that can be added to many nations. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. So the first one, there are so many variants out of it that it's gonna be a little bit difficult to just say every single aspect of them. I'm gonna try to talk in a general sense, okay? But it is the MIM-23 Hawk. This AA system, it is very old, you know, it's from the 60s initially, and it has so many variants and so many operators that it would be difficult to explain each of these in the game, right? But in a general sense, it is kind of a heavier AA system than what we normally have in the game. It would not be particularly amazing in turning, with the initial models having around 15 Gs of turn, but it would have a pretty good range even in the lower rank. So initially it had around 20 to 25 kilometers of range, in later models 45 and even more, you know. So in a general sense, it would be a missile that it's pretty fast. You know, it is semi-active radar homing. It wouldn't turn too much, but this isn't supposed to be a missile that it's being used by top tier, you know, AA systems. It would be more for 10 point something, maybe 11.0, but probably like 10 point something. And a lot of countries could actually use it. So there is basically like a whole list of countries that we can talk about. Of course, the US would be the main user. But for example, Japan used it. Israel use it. Sweden used the system. Germany, France, Italy, Taiwan, so it can be used with the Chinese, you know. And there are many others that are sub 3s. For example, Belgium, the Netherlands. We have Thailand. All of these systems were used by these countries. So many countries. Most of the Western allied countries would use the Hawk system, right? And with that, it can have various amounts of ranges, various amounts of radars. It can use towed radars. It can actually use launchers that are their own vehicle using the tractor. For example, the Israeli use the same tracked tractor that the Chamm uses, for example. They tested with that. So there are many versions that can be added. So I'm not going to list them all. Normally, it would be a towed launcher and a towed radar with trucks or jeeps, right? So we can have the same kind of principle as the Slam Ram over here. So 2 launchers, 1 radar, or 2 radars maybe, or something like that are towed by the same vehicle. Something like that could be added without too much trouble, right? They would be a very good range depending on the BR missile, but with not a lot of turn and a big boom. They are very heavy missiles that are meant to be destroying even missiles themselves, but ballistic missiles and stuff, but also like bombers and stuff like that, right? So for lower ranks, not top tier, lower ranks, I mean 10.0 plus, right? Or something along those lines, it would be a pretty significant AA system, not good for short range, but amazing in the longer ranges at these BRs, right? So it would kind of create kind of like a no-fly zone for long range that people would need to fly lower to actually try to get closer, right? So it's a very iconic system from the Cold War, and it needs to be added. The second one is an interesting one as well. It's very broad as well, and it was used by many nations as well, but in this case, for the Russian side, the Buk or Cub, right? We can have both of them. But basically, this system is a little bit different than the Hawk. They're not normally towed. They are basically just their own vehicles, right? And the interesting part about these is that they are highly mobile, and they have their own, in the Cub form, or in the Buk form, sorry, they have their own radars, tracking radars on the launchers, which means you can fire at 2 targets at once, for example, with 2 launchers. You would have still a normal search radar vehicle and then 2 launchers with their own tracking radars. They are normally semi-active radar homing missiles. They used to be, you know, they are trying to modernize it, so I'm not gonna get too much into it. The objective is for the lower ranks, 10, 11.0, something like that, right? And of course, the Cub, for example, doesn't have the tracking radar, but it would have in the vehicle, but it would have on the radar vehicle as well, right? So You can have a lower version in BR, which is the Cub, and then the higher BR version, which is the Buk, right? All of these systems would be pretty interesting because they have a little bit more range than the Hawk, so they would probably be a higher BR. Normally, it would have around 40 to 50 kilometers max range, like effective, depending on the version. Initial models had around 20 to 30, so later models like 40, something like that. So, of course, I'm talking about max range, so the effective range of the initial ones would be around 10 kilometers maybe, with 19 Gs, right? The more modern ones would be 24 Gs, but 20 to a little bit more effective range. So it wouldn't turn as much as the more modern ones that are being added, but it would have a lot of range. The same as the Hawk, basically, right? So a little bit more, but a different BR as well, right? And it would be a bigger missile as well than we are currently having. And in a normal sense, it would be a faster missile as well. So a lot of energy, but not a lot of turn, okay? And these systems, they were used by many, many nations as well. Less than the Hawk, but still in the game. Of course, there's so many other nations, but for the game's sake, we would have, of course, for the Russians, for the Chinese, they also have their own version out of this thing, the HQ-16. They say it's like a navalized version that they use as well. So, yeah, basically, it is a completely different truck, a different thing, but it is pretty much the same missile, but modernize it. And of course, Finland can actually use this system, so the Swedish tech tree can also use it. Another country that uses that can be added is the Indians, so it can be added for the British as well. There are so many other nations that can be added. Iran apparently uses it, North Korea, Pakistan, you know, many other nations, but in a general sense, these are the ones, you know, Russia, China, Finland, and then maybe the British with India could use the Buk, right? Or a version of a Cub, a version of a Buk, something like that, right? So these are very interesting missiles, very iconic for the Cold War as well, and yeah, cannot wait to use this system. It was even leaked in one of the major leaks that we had that it's coming this year, so I'm excited about this AA system, although not that excited because the Russians already have the Panzer, but for other nations, especially like the Finnish and the Chinese, it would be cool to have these, right? And then we have a Japanese system that would be probably the best AA they can get. It would be more probably on par with some other systems that may be added in the future, but it's still pretty interesting and I think should be added in a soonish kind of future. And it is the Type 03 Chamm, or I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry, okay? But basically it's a medium range system that uses trucks and towed vehicles, normally trucks, you know. Same kind of idea as the Iris-T, so we would have a radar vehicle and then the launchers. And they're pretty much like in the same kind of way that they use. They have a vertical launcher that, you know, basculate up, and it is basically that, right? So the missile itself would be a pretty interesting missile, around 50 kilometers range. You know, it would be a missile, I don't know exactly how much it can turn, but it would use apparently an ESA radar homing in the terminal guidance as well. So it would be a very effective missile. Inertial guidance together with data link as well. So yeah, pretty interesting, right? And because of the ESA, how it works and stuff, it can actually target multiple targets at once as well, which is pretty good. So for sure that would be a top tier vehicle, you know. And it would be basically like an Iris-T launcher, but with an active radar homing. So of course, active radar homings more or less should be less effective than the IR ones in the game purposes, right? Because of multipath and stuff, but it is still pretty interesting. I would love to Japan to have its own system like that. Although, yes, they are receiving now the Type 81 working. It's not really on par with the other AA systems that we're talking about normally, right? The Iris-T, the SlamRan stuff. It is a pretty good system, but I don't think it's like quite up there. It's a little bit of a step down. Because it's pretty much the same system that we had before. It's just now it has the radar and the active radar homing missile, right? So it's a little bit better, but not by much. It still turns the same and everything. So this would actually make Japan be on par with the other nations, right? So no IR missiles here, but the radar missiles that they use are pretty amazing. And the ESA, in theory, should make multipath a little bit less effective, I would assume, in real life, you know. I just think that it's kind of weird how multipath work in the game. But yeah, it would be a bunch of trucks, launchers, radars, and yeah, Japan uses it, nobody else, but it would be a very cool system. So there are even upgrades to it to extend the range, to intercept cruise missiles, short-range ballistic missiles as well. Even there are planned software updates to help be a little bit more close to a hypersonic capability, defeating missile, you know. So, for example, to intercept the missiles that are, you know, going hypersonic nowadays. So that would be interesting as well. But in a general sense, it would be a very, very top tier AA system for Japan. Okay? So I see you guys on the next one. Make sure to subscribe. Let me know in the comments, of course, if you want any general idea of AA systems. I think these three are pretty amazing. The Hawk could be added for lower ranks for multiple nations. The Buk as well, lower ranks, multiple nations. And then the Japanese trying to get something that it's better than the Type 81. I know, it didn't even have the patch yet, but you know what I mean, right? It's always good to have more and more of these vehicles to protect the skies over the battlefield against pesky KH-38, right? But yeah, guys, basically this is it. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and bye, guys. See ya.